A little differently tonight. If anybody wants to speak, they need to come and see me now before we start the meeting. I have some names of people who want to speak, but if there's anybody out there who hasn't indicated that and wants to, they need to come and do that now. All right, let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. The next thing on the agenda is public comment, and the first person up for public comment is Nina Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Nina Murphy from Bristol. My husband Bart Ferris and I are the parents of two children, Ryder, class of 2019, and Ren, class of 2023. Ironically, today would be my late father's, sorry, just a little emotional. Today would be my late father's 90th birthday. A day does not go by in the last almost 7 years I don't think of him or the lessons he taught me. He came from a modest background, was a Korean War veteran who survived deadly hand-to-hand combat and received his college degree thanks to the GI Bill. He went on to become a teacher, junior high teacher, a high school department chair, a college professor, and a published novelist, lifting up the lives of thousands of children along the way. He and my equally accomplished mother, now 87 years old, raised their children to speak out against injustices. They rightly believed if you stay silent and don't speak out, you are equally complicit with the actions of the persecutors. I want to thank today the many citizens from the Bristol-Warren community who did not remain silent and publicly supported Mount Hope High School Principal Dr. Deborah DiBiase. From the many students with their social media posts, or students like Sophie Pimentel, class of 2022, who initiated an online petition drive which received over 1,100 signatures, or Emma Serps, class of 2023, who organized a rally which received press coverage, or the teachers, business owners, parents, and non-parents alike who requested lawn signs, or those who wrote letters to the local newspapers, and the many individuals who emailed and or called school committee members and Superintendent Riley. The outcome is not what we had wanted. However, while some members of the school committee achieved their goal of removing Dr. D from the building, they were not successful in removing her from our district because of this public support. As a result, many families will benefit from Dr. D's expertise, her guidance, and her dedication to Bristol-Warren students in the years to come. Thank you.
Margaret Richards.
Good evening. I'm Margaret Richards. I'm a parent in Bristol. My daughter just finished kindergarten at Colt Andrews, and I have 4-year-old twins on their way in. I'm only recently became aware that classrooms are being cut at Colt Andrews for next year. That's the plan anyway, through at least kindergarten, first and second grade is my understanding. I understand also this is not new news, but I just found out about it. So I'm really here just with a couple of just questions. One is, I guess, as a parent who tries to stay on top of things, how did I miss this? Like, is there somewhere I should be looking? And I mean this very sincerely. Is there somewhere I should be looking to get this information? Because it really does concern me quite a bit that my kid's classroom is moving from 3 to 2 to increase class sizes. So that's my first question is, where should I go to get this information if I missed it? And if it's not readily accessible, why not? The next question is, what can I do about it? I am concerned about raising class sizes. My daughter benefited tremendously from the amazing diversity of kids cognitively, developmentally, socially, everything in her classroom. And there's lots of research, as I'm sure a lot of you know, that increased class sizes just leads to tougher times for kids that have challenges. Specifically with my daughter, though, she's on the other end of things. She's really freaking smart. And I really am concerned that as much as I am very concerned that kids that have the toughest needs for keeping up, that they're going to be harmed by these smaller class sizes. I'm also concerned for my daughter, as I'm aware there aren't any enrichment classes available, at least at the elementary school, maybe not at any school level. So I'm wondering, I'm really just worried that she's going to just be sitting there reading to herself again. And what I can do about who I can talk to, whether the question of redistricting and moving some of the classroom kids from Rockwell, which I understand has larger classes, shifting them to Colt Andrews has been discussed, and what I can do about it. Thanks.
Dr. Santa. Dr. Sana's the individual that you need to speak with on your concerns about the classroom. It's not on our agenda, so I can't talk about it tonight, but her office would know the questions that you're asking and the information that you're looking for. Is my microphone on?
So what she said was that after tonight, you can contact Dr. Santa's office and Dr. Santa will answer any questions that you have.
I'll be happy to talk with you tomorrow if you want to give my office a call. Okay.
Not at a school committee meeting under public comments. I'm sorry, we don't respond to public comments.
Peter Hewitt.
Good evening. My name is Peter Hewitt. I'm from Wendy Drive in Bristol. I thought the issue of tonight's meeting would be whether or not Ms. DiBiase's contract as high school principal would be renewed for another year. I am aware of the solid support she received by an editorial in the East Bay newspapers, several letters to the editor, and comments made by a few parents of students in the high school at a recent school committee meeting. The common denominator of those supportive comments seemed to me to be that Ms. DiBiase was a cheerleader for the kids and that she is well-liked, if not beloved, by some students and their parents. What I found to be most noteworthy and lacking, however, is that no one ever raised any concern about the dismal high school record of proficiency levels in English and math and the disturbing absenteeism rate among teachers and students. For me, empirical data on education achievement results is far more important than whether a person is liked or disliked. The school committee apparently has been spared the burden of deciding Ms. DiBiase's tenure as principal. Another decision has been made that makes the issue of renewing her contract as principal moot. And that raises in my mind a different set of issues and concerns that need to be addressed. Ms. DiBiase apparently has been kicked up to the district administrative level as the director of multi-tiered support services. Is this a brand new administrative position? Why was it created? Is it necessary? Is Ms. DiBiase the best qualified to fill this position? Was the position advertised? Should it have been advertised? How much will the creation of this position cost out of the school's budget? Will the position require additional staffing hires? And if so, at what cost? I believe it would be a good thing, a necessary thing, if someone in authority would address these questions and provide answers to the tax-paying public, as well as to parents whose interests and concerns extend beyond how much a teacher or a principal is simply liked or disliked. Cheerleading is one thing, leading is quite another. Our schools and our children need leaders who bring rigor, discipline, and equal opportunity to excel to the students. Thank you.
Mr. Hewitt,
the questions that you've asked will be addressed tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Michael Burns.
My name is Michael Burns. I live in Worley Street in Bristol. I wanted to address tonight the painting of a BLM, Black Lives Matter mural on the high school grounds. And I just want to make a statement about BLM, which was built on a lie of police murdering blacks on American streets, as well as a lie of systematic racism in America. Two of the three founders of BLM were avowed Marxists. The mural has the Marxist salute on it. And the leadership of BLM has disgraced themselves financially and done very little good to Black communities across the nation. Of course, Black lives do matter, as do all lives. But BLM is a divisive organization that divides people into groups, into tribes. It has ignored the plight of Black communities, and it has ignored the fact that 10,000 Blacks are killed on the streets in America every year, mostly by Blacks. It perpetuates Black victimhood. It's opposed to the nuclear family, and much of their program is to the disadvantage of Black communities. There is much to celebrate in Black history in the US. A mural of Frederick Douglass and Lincoln together would be most instructive. One of the Tuskegee Airmen would also be a very positive message to Blacks and whites alike. Of Booker T. Washington and Julius Rosenwald, who built 5,000 schools for Blacks in America in the 20s and 30s. Of George Washington Carver and his inventions, and of Martin Luther King and I Have a Dream speech. Those would be positive murals. Those would be inspiring and instructive murals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That ends public comment. Thank you, Mr. Burns. Is my voice not coming through this microphone?
Yes.
All right. Now,
People out here are hard of hearing, so if you could really speak into the microphone, it would help.
well, if you'd wear your hearing aid, it would really help.
I'm not hard of hearing. I speak into the
All right, now we're moving on to the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion on the consent agenda, I am removing B8, Accounting Manager, and letter J, Capital Facilities Projects Report. We're not prepared to discuss those tonight. So, Aaron, did you want to do?
I think we need to make a motion to approve first.
So, first of all, does anyone want to exempt anything from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Go ahead, which ones?
B9, G, H, I, and K.
Now you need a motion to approve everything else on the consent agenda.
Yeah, I need a motion to approve
Motion to
everything.
approve everything else?
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, did you want to say, Diane, who we hired in those? Or should we
You want
just,
a motion to approve B9?
yeah, I'm getting there. Oh, I was doing something else.
So we
Motion to
take
approve
each
B9.
item now one at a time, is that correct?
No, all I was going to say was that we could say who we gave
Oh, I see.
contracts
For
to.
the contracts, yes, certainly. So for the contracts that were just approved through the consent agenda, that was a contract for our middle school principal, Dennis Morrell, the middle school assistant principal, Michelle Clifford, the high school assistant principal, Michelle King, the high school assistant principal, Robert Campion, the high school college and career coordinator, Nicole Lyons, and the elementary principal, Deborah Kearns. Also, we have the elementary assistant principal, Andre Audette. So those are all employees that have been currently with us, and we've just renewed their contract.
And the
Oh, and I
other-
apologize,
Yeah.
one more, and the
So that, yeah,
How long are those contracts for?
contracts are for 1 year.
All of them are for 1 year, is that correct?
The ones that I just read, yes.
Thank you.
all right, now I'll entertain a motion to accept B9.
So moved. Second.
Discussion.
So the reason I asked to have these items pulled off the consent agenda is just so that we can provide the public with information on these different items.
So, yeah, so Mr. Hewitt had some questions which you were directly,
Yep, on that first
Discussing.
one, and then the others, whoever is able to talk to those, that would be great. Thank you.
I'll start with the MTSS director. So MTSS stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support, and it's an approach that we've been using right along, but something that we know that we need to strengthen. So as part of our ESSER application, those are the federal relief funds, we had written in a 2-year position, and we wrote this in probably well over a year ago, and the intent of the position is to strengthen academic and social emotional supports within our schools. Right now, we do have programs in place, but there are not consistent approaches across the schools. So the intent of this position was to hire a 2-year consultant to come in and work with us to develop those procedures. We did have an internal candidate apply, and she does have the qualifications. The position was posted, and we're looking forward to having this position work with our principals, work with our teachers in each school to assess the programs that we have in place related to academic and social emotional needs, and to develop the programs that are needed or to make the improvements needed so that we're more successful in closing learning gaps for students and helping students to be successful. Does that
Thank you.
address your question?
I think another question was, when was the job posted?
That I do not have in front of me. I would say it was posted well over a month ago, if not 2 months.
Thank
How
you.
many applicants did you have for that position?
We had, the last I looked, I would say we had at least 6 or 7 candidates.
And the question is, how many years is this contract for?
This is a 2-year contract.
And where does the salary come from?
The salary comes from the federal ESSER funds.
So it's not from our normal budget, it's from the ESSER funds?
Correct.
And we're committed for 2 years off ESSER funds, is that correct?
It's 2 years through the grant, and then the position ends.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay?
All right, letter G, KMS Bleacher Replacement.
Tom or Tony? would you-
Tom, I'm getting there.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. I know that that Tom will be discussing this item when we put on the presentation on the capital 5-year plan, but we thought maybe you could know ahead of time where that was coming from. So, Aaron, do you want to?
Again, this was another item I wanted pulled off consent because I'm not sure that it may be routine for right now, but it's not generally routine item. So I just thought maybe informing the public of why we're doing this, what needs to be done, how much, et cetera.
Sure.
Thank you.
So the bleachers at the KMS gym were identified in the last 5-year capital improvement or necessity of construction as something that was beyond life expectancy. The bleachers also have deficiencies in terms of ADA access, life safety concerns. They don't have handrails. And, it was, as I said, it was identified over 5 years ago, something that should be done with capital improvement money. Okay. All right. So we developed an RFP several months ago and put it on the street, received bids for the bleacher replacement at KMS. And it's a complete replacement of all the wooden bleachers that are in the gym. Those bleachers are original to Mount Warren High School. They've been there more than 60 years, and they've gotten to the point where it's almost impossible to repair them, as the parts are no longer available to be able to replace the parts that are there. And as I started to say, the bleachers also are non-compliant in terms of current standards and codes, both in terms of ADA access and also life safety for fall hazards and things like that. So the request is simply to remove the bleacher systems as they exist today and replace them all in kind with a bleacher system similar to what's here at Mount Hope High School. They're going to be telescoping bleachers that come out. They have individual seats because the spacing is now required to have that type of a plastic seating to make sure you don't overstuff the bleachers and have too many people in there. There are now fall protection guards on the sides of the bleachers. There's a center handrail to be able to allow people to have a handrail to walk up and down the rails. And, as I said, it went out to a competitive bid. We received bids on June 16th, and we are prepared to award the contract to A1 Sports Products. I think they're out of New Hampshire. So are there any other questions?
Tom, you heard the question before, but I'll ask it again. What color will they be?
Well, we just like the color to be purple.
Say again?
The color of the seats are going to be purple.
I was hoping it would be gray, and I'll tell you why. That whole building is maroon, and you're going to put purple seats in a maroon building. I think you should think twice about putting that color in there.
That was the principal's selection, Mr. Cabral.
Please?
That was the principal's selection.
I think we ought to talk to the principal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I need all in favor?
I know.
All-
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The next thing on that was pulled from the consent agenda is H, which is the Rhode Island unemployment past claims due. I need a motion to accept this report.
Motion.
I need a second. All right, discussion. Karen, you pulled it?
Mr. Ferrucci, would you mind just letting people know what that's about?
Happy to do
Thank
that. As you may have heard 2 to 3 years ago, there were significant numbers of unemployment fraudulent claims being processed, where folks were able to get individuals' names, go down and file during the COVID period. And so folks, the state was trying to get money out to these folks to support them through the COVID crisis. In the meantime, quite a few of the claims turned out to be fraud across the state. And Bristol was involved with that as well. So a number of employees' names were used where funds were distributed. And then in turn, the state sends those records to Bristol seeking payment. We have before us a bill showing about $56,000 worth of, about 18 months worth of claims that we believed were fraudulent. And with the transition of leadership that you've had in the district, it kind of bumped along on being able to provide the evidence to the contrary. It rolled into our laps over the last 6 months that we got to resolve it. And so our HR director did a review, and then I did a review of her review. And as my memo indicates, there are a few claims that may not be fraudulent, but they may not be applicable either. And the only way we could have gotten a fraudulent claim denied for us having to pay it was to actually have an individual send us a letter saying that they did not physically collect unemployment. And if we didn't get that one document, then the unemployment office said that we couldn't process it as a fraudulent claim. So I'm here tonight to say I'd like to pay the bill, but there is a due process of appeal, which I can bring in evidence to show if somebody actually worked on our roster and they got unemployment wrongly, which is not fraudulent, but we still can receive payback from the state. And that's what I want to pursue. And any of those claims that if we haven't heard from folks, we're going to reach out to them again to say if we can get letters from them validating that in fact they did not collect the unemployment. And I would be able to bring that to the appeals court as well. So I want to stop the interest and the penalties that are accumulating on the outstanding bill so that we can attack hopefully some refund of the funds that are being asked for tonight.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions? Mrs. Schofield asked that a lot of these be pulled. They were discussed in full at the budget subcommittee meeting, which is why they were originally under the consent agenda. So we're just explaining things that Mrs. Schofield felt we should put out there in the public. So all in favor, I already did that.
Nope, we have to vote on it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The next thing off the consent agenda is the letter I, security upgrades, legacy general contracting. I need a motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. Again,
Tom? I don't know. I'm sorry if I'm putting anyone on the spot. I'm assuming y'all know
It's okay.
these forward and backwards anyways, and
So what this is, just to give a little bit of background, is that the district did a comprehensive security assessment and upgrade proposal over the last 5 years. Again, this was part of the necessity of construction 5 years ago. And there was a comprehensive RFP that was looking at doing what I'll refer to as entry door and lobby hardening, as well as security camera upgrades and building access system upgrades. And the total of that package came in at about $2.3 million, which was over the budget by more than $1 million. So about 6 months ago, we started breaking it apart into smaller contracts because we realized that doing nothing was not helping the school get more secure. And if we couldn't afford to do everything, we're going to break it into smaller packages and do what we could afford to do. And so about 6 months ago or 4 months ago, there was a proposal here to do the security camera project, which we authorized and we're in the process of installing now. We'll have it completed before school starts in the fall. And what this is the second phase of part of that comprehensive plan, which is to do the lobby hardening at some of our schools. This doesn't address every school, but it addresses what were considered the schools with the most security issues. So it's doing improvements to the lobby, the entry access system, and in essence, what it does to generalize is it's providing a double set of locked doors at each building vestibule and trying to direct all visitors and all people that enter the building to come through one central point. So in that secured lobby, we are now providing what I'm going to refer to as a teller window, where there is a glass window where you can have an audible connection. People can have a deal tray where you can pass papers in and out, but it's bulletproof glass, and you're allowed to be able to identify visitors before you let them into the building proper. Right now, a lot of our buildings are on a buzzer system. You don't have direct line of sight to who's at the door. They buzz, somebody remotely releases the door, the people come in. We don't have a chance to really understand who's coming in before we've already let them into the building. So the intent is to make these little catchment areas where people can be let into the building so they're out of the weather, identify themselves, be able to show identification if there's a need to verify who they are, and then be able to, if it's simply dropping off papers or picking up papers, do their transaction right there and not actually let them into the building. So that's type of architectural work is being done at Gutierrez, at Mount Hope High School, at Hugh Cole, and at Colton Andrews. There is some minor work that's happening at KMS, but that architecturally is already well suited to do that type of work in its existing layout. So the legacy contracting is a firm that we went out and got competitive bids on, and that's the recommendation to the school board tonight. This work also is scheduled to be done this summer. We intend of having it 100% complete before the kids come back in the fall. The one caveat to that is Colt School, because Colt is a very historic building. So we are working with a local contractor, Westway Construction, to physically rebuild the exterior doors the way they are. We're not replacing them. We're simply rebuilding the old historic doors. But in rebuilding them, we're able to make them stronger, being able to put on new hinges, new latching and hardware so that they're going to be physically much more secure than they are today. But we're not going to historically change them.
Yes,
How-
sorry.
how much is it going to?
No, we're not entertaining questions from the public. Tony? Yes.
Mr. Frucci, did we find out at budget, when we discussed this at the budget subcommittee, that's when we learned that there had been some money approved from the state for schools wanting to spend money on security after the shooting in Texas. Did we find out when we would get that money and if we could access it to pay for any of this?
No. I think with all of the vacation and year in the school, we weren't able to get confirmation on that particular item. But what I did want to do is step back just a half a step and kind of fill in the funding side of this question. The district has a 5-year plan that's been approved by RIDE that was supposed to expire June 30th this year. We've got an extension out till December 31st to complete the projects that RIDE has already pre-approved. And what that does is allow for the housing aid from the state to offset about 60% of our costs. So that's number one. Number two, we had actually had the school committee adopt a $2.7 million capital budget with their operating budget last August. And during those budget discussions, we identified that these projects were the tail end of the 5-year capital plan. And that anything that doesn't get accomplished now, we're going to take on a new role of another 5-year plan coming up shortly. So the dollars that we're talking about tonight are within your capital plan budget. We did explain at the finance committee that there's been some cost overruns because we're seeing all the escalation across the board in all kinds of construction. We have contingency funds to cover that, as well as this opportunity to get the grants that are now coming up for the recent shootings. Either way, these projects are funded. They were something that were identified a year ago, and it took us 6 months for design and go out to bid, and that's the normal typical process. We will get the work done over the summer, and we will get our housing aid from the state, 60% of the costs that we're staring at, and we have the funds in the bank to pay these construction costs that are on the table this evening. If we get the grant for the security, that will free up additional funds that will apply to the next 5-year capital plan conversation that will be coming up actually a little later this evening.
Right. I just want to make sure that we don't leave any state money that is specifically for this project on the table.
Agreed.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
I'd just like to make a statement that the building you're sitting in right now has 38 external doors. And we have to try to maintain some type of security on 38 doors. That's almost a difficult possibility for Tom to organize something like that. So that's the problem we're up against in these buildings.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And the last thing that was pulled is letter K, RIDE MOA Memorandum of Agreement for Arts Initiative SBA Capital Fund.
Diane? Sam,
Sure, I'm
thank you.
happy to provide some background on this. This is a new set of funding that's become available to school districts in Rhode Island. Bristol-Warren has to receive $94,280. And the purpose of the funds is to re-engage students in the arts. The funds can be used for whatever the district chooses that will be most impactful in re-engaging students with the arts. They list some uses such as auditorium upgrades, purchase of musical instruments or visual audio equipment, as well as other initiatives. So this is something that we would be looking at. We would be looking at what were the requests of schools that we would not be able to, that we weren't able to fund through our general budget. We've just received notice of the funds. We have not had a chance to really sit down and work with schools to determine the best use of the funds.
Thanks. Anybody else?
Can
All
I
in
make
favor?
a motion
I'm
to
sorry.
accept it?
What's
We didn't
that?
have a motion on the table.
I thought we did.
So we do now, because I just made. it.
Second.
Second.
In a second? You second it? All right. You know what? I would be interested in what we spend that money on when we finally figure out what it is spent on, if you don't mind, sometime in the future.
Certainly will report that to you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Yes, second page. I need a motion to approve and seal the minutes of the executive session.
So moved.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The next thing is what I was talking about a little earlier, which is an introduction to educational and capital 5-year plan. And you guys have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I had alluded to just a moment ago, with the resolution of the last 5-year plan being finished, the district is now in pursuit of a new 5-year plan to be approved by the Rhode Island Department of Education, where we'll be seeking funding for a number of projects. We have the school committee has awarded a contract to Colliers Associates, which is our educational and consulting planner, for preparing our application for RIDE. And what they'll end up doing is assessing our district educationally as well as our facilities, and marrying the two pieces together to come up with a new 5-year plan of how to develop and fix our buildings to meet the 21st structural issues that the district faces. So I'm happy to say that this evening we have the consultants with us. Mr. Derek Osterman is from Colliers. He brought his team. He's prepared a PowerPoint presentation of where we're at and where he's planning on going with us. And so I'm going to just turn it over to his crew. Good evening.
Great. Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. We're delighted to be here and so glad that you've put your trust in us as we get ready for this next year 5-year capital improvement plan with the state of Rhode Island as we look at your facilities. Just make sure my clicker works. It may not. I may need to have to call slide. So I'll start very quickly with some introductions and then turn it right over to my team, the technical experts who will be taking you through the process. With me tonight is Christopher Spiegel, one of our project managers, as well as Manuel Cordeiro, our educational planner. So they've prepared an agenda for you this evening that talks a little bit about who we are, the RIDE process that I know that you've all likely been through before, but are about to go through it again in terms of putting together your new plan, our work plan to get you there, what educational visioning will look like as we start to look at your school facilities, and what the next capital round of improvements may need to be, and then open discussion with you a little bit about the next steps we plan to take over the summer and into the fall. So with that in mind, I'm going to call slide and hand it over to Chris.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. I know there's a lot of items on the agenda. I'll try to get through this quickly. If you have any questions, please stop me, and I'd be happy to go a little bit deeper on any specific subject. First, we'd like to lay out the RIDE process for a necessity of construction application. As this group is aware, a necessity of construction application is a way of planning a project that results in reimbursement funding from the state of Rhode Island through RIDE, School Building Authority. As you can see before you, you have two potential entry points into this process. The first would be on September 15th of 2022, or on February 15th of 2023. This is when your stage 1 application would be due. Next slide, please. Once you complete the stage 1 and stage 2, which I'll get into a little bit more detail here in a second, you would then go into stage 3, which is the design of the project, stage 4, which is the actual construction of the project, and then stage 5, which is your asset maintenance reporting. Next slide, please. So what is a necessity, or what are the deliverables and necessity of school construction application? What we're here mostly to talk about tonight is the qualifications and deliverables of a stage 1 process. This would be a facilities condition assessment. This is when our team goes through all of your buildings with a fine-tooth comb and finds out all of the opportunities as well as all of the deficiencies with your current buildings. Everything from, as was discussed earlier, security, maybe security needs improving, maybe there are space issues, building leaks, these type of items. We would also work with you to develop the demographic projections of the district. This is essential when we're talking about the next phase, which is the utilization analysis. That takes a look at all of the spaces within your schools and see how they're being utilized and if there's any opportunities for efficiencies or to provide additional programming that may be needed by the district. And then finally, the educational programming review, which is where we align your master plan with your strategic comprehensive plan and the overall goals of the committee and the district. Having said that, after we can submit the stage 1, Then we move into stage 2. So if stage 1 is identifying the needs of the district, stage 2 would be developing a solution to those needs. Stage 3 is when we actually design the solutions. Stage 4 is where we build it, and stage 5, as I said, is where we perform asset protection and maintenance reporting. Next slide, please. So again, these are the 4 critical deliverables of a stage 1 application. As I mentioned, a facilities conditions assessment. My team will be going through the building, as I mentioned, looking at your facilities. The educational programming alignment, again, this is where we take a look at your strategic plan and make sure that your facilities support both your near-term and your long-term goals. Utilization analysis, we take a look at your spaces and see if there are better ways of using those spaces, or if you're overcrowded, if you're undercrowded. And then, of course, the demographic projections. We want to see what your enrollment looks like, not just for the next 5 years, but for 20 and 25 years down the line, to make sure that we're planning our facilities with respect to incoming populations. Next slide, please. Don't want to get into too much detail about this, but right now is a transformational time to invest in schools. Really a generational opportunity is on the board for school districts with these temporary bonuses, which allow you to maximize your reimbursement. Essentially, you get bonus points if your projects hit some of these goals. We can go into a little bit more detail about that perhaps at our next meeting, but suffice it to say that Colliers will work with our educational consultant and the committee and district leadership to make sure that we are maximizing value to get all of the dollars possible for this project. Next slide, please. And I'd like to turn over to Manuel Cordeiro, the educational consultant for the group.
Hi, good evening, Madam Chair, school committee members, members of the community, and of course, district administration. My name is Manuel Cordeiro. I am an architect by training, and an educator, but spend most of my time now as an educational facility planner, and I'll be helping your district with this work. Next slide, please. So, by way of a very brief background, I spent the last decade of my life at the School Building Authority at the Rhode Island Department of Education, basically building the program that you are now going through, as well as advocating for the bond and the incentives that Chris was just mentioning, achievements that I'm really proud of. But what I'm really interested in is what you see here, what's happening in those classrooms. Next slide, please. We spend a lot of our time, and especially not too long ago when we were in a moratorium, focused on facility conditions, chasing those all-important, critically important health and safety repairs. And part of the opportunity that we have now is to reintroduce the educational program, to really start to think about what you're doing in your classrooms, what you're doing in your schools, and what improvements can we make to facilities to really meet the needs of your teachers and students today, but also, most importantly, in the future. Next. This captures it aptly, and we can keep moving, but the real goal here is, next, to really think about what your vision is for the future of your facilities. Now, I'm going to show you here a building that might look familiar to many of you. It is not, the one on the right, the plan on the right is not in Rhode Island. The two on the left are in Rhode Island, but they're familiar to many of us because they're the classrooms and the hallways that we attended. And we have inherited a kind of wonderful, but sometimes difficult legacy of classroom buildings. And next slide, please. That cells and bells model, as we call it in facility planning, was built for an age when we were preparing students for a vastly different economy. You can see images of a classroom in the East Bay on the right, and images from our factories during the Industrial Revolution on the left. You can see the striking similarities from the classroom to the workplace. But we know that we are now preparing students for a vastly different economy. We are still obviously going to have some of those manufacturing jobs, but our economy has shifted dramatically. Next slide. Our economy now includes automation, includes workplaces that look dramatically different, and I even included on the bottom left the Zoom parents, right? Like, this is the reality that we are all living in now. So the question is, next slide, what is the classroom that meets those needs? Part of what we'll start by doing is really digging into and understanding the work that you're doing. I already had the great pleasure in the last week to visit all of your schools and meet with all of your principals and start to get a good understanding of the work that's happening. I've also had a chance to review your strategic plan, which I understand you've recently been working on, that actually has some of the concepts that you'll see reflected here. On the right, the graph is a little bit hard to read, but it captures a kind of cascade or a kind of foundation of critical skills that, and I want to emphasize that does include what we call the kind of the traditional R's, writing, reading, arithmetic. Sometimes people see all these new skills and say, but wait, what happened to the traditional R's that I'm used to hearing about? Those are still there. We're still teaching those, certainly, but we're striving to do a lot more. Next slide. And that might mean that our classrooms are going to look dramatically different. And so here is just one example. I actually did see in many of your classrooms a lot of different examples of furniture and classroom arrangements that adapted to a lot of different learning modalities. So that is happening already in your schools. The question is, how much is it helped by the facilities and what can we do to really push that forward? And you'll see I'm carrying some of your strategic plan elements on the left. Next. So how do we get there? I will not spend too much time on this, but I'll just spend a couple minutes just going through the next few slides, just telling you about some of the next few steps that we'll be taking. So you'll see here that I'm going to do what I call a desktop analysis, where I'm looking at the work that you've already done, including the strategic plan and other guiding documents. I have already conducted all of those walkthroughs just in time at the end of the school year. So we've already done that. And I should clarify that I have conducted walkthroughs as an ed planner. The facilities analysis team still will come back and look at the facilities from that standpoint, from an architectural and engineering standpoint. And we'll start to develop an educational program. And that's, in essence, the description of what you're trying to do and how well does it align with your facilities. Next slide. And that includes a look at enrollment capacities and utilization. You have noticed that some of the bonuses that the state provides are around utilization. So really looking at optimizing your utilization across your portfolio. So that's something that we'll start to look at. Again, both current enrollments and 5-year projections against what the capacity are of your facility. And when I say capacity, this isn't a kind of fire code capacity. This is the capacity of your buildings to serve the education that you're trying to deliver. So part of what we're looking at is, do all of your specialists have the spaces that they need to do the work that they are trying to do? Do you have resource rooms? I understand that you're actually doing push-in, so it looks a little bit different. So how are your buildings adapting to the work that you're doing? Next. And this is an iterative process. So sometimes I like to share this because it is certainly not always linear. And there will be moments where we will loop back and, most importantly, loop back to engage with members of the school committee, members of the community at large, members of your staff, teachers and students. So that's all part of the information gathering and part of this loop in order to move this project forward. Next. So that is my last slide. I guess I'll end with one reflection, which is that I am struck by, and this is no surprise, but struck by how well you've maintained your facilities and obviously the kind of amazing historic facilities that you have. And I am sure that some of you might see the presentation and think, wow, what does this mean for those historic facilities? And I wouldn't jump to any conclusions. I am an architect, but more importantly, a planner. I spent 10 years at the School Building Authority advocating for historic facilities and created the first comprehensive inventory of historic facilities for the state. It's a balancing act, and it's a conversation that we will continue to have throughout this process. So with that, I'll open it up to questions, and welcome back, Derek.
Great. Thank you again so much. So as students and many of the faculty members have left for the summer, the technical, architectural, and engineering team will be going into your buildings to get a deeper understanding of how they're all functioning, either well or ways that they could be improved. And some of the baseline we'll be setting is just our analysis and database decisions to give you a really solid understanding of where you are today and what just capital maintenance looks like. Beyond that, we start to have really the exciting conversations about curriculum and teaching and learning in the district, which Manuel will be so important to be a part of. So what we wanted to do, if you're interested this evening, is just talk to you a little bit about what that means to you, what that looks like to you. We're happy to engage throughout the summer. We're happy to continue engaging as everyone comes back, because we want to make sure that as we start to collect these data points, that there's real community participation and support of what that vision is and what teaching and learning is like in the district today and what it'll be like tomorrow. So with that, happy to help any way I can.
Thank you very much. I think we need to connect with our superintendent, and we need to work out how we do this. And unfortunately, it's been unavailable for a couple of weeks. I absolutely agree with you. I have no problem with us running workshops, community forums, whatever it is that you need. But I need to wait until Superintendent Riley is back. So if anybody from here has any questions in the short term, great. But I went through this once before, back in, well, almost 20 years ago. And so I know exactly what you're doing. And we're not quite ready yet, I think.
Great. Yeah, understand.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a question that I just thought of as you were talking about. I'm fascinated by the, making sure that our classrooms look more like the workspaces that our kids are entering. I discussed this recently with someone that, we don't need to learn things by rote anymore because we carry really powerful computers in our hands. Instead, we need to learn how to deal with that information that we have access to, the critical thinking piece, rather than the learning by rote. And it got me to wondering, as you talked about flexible workspaces, have you done any work or have you ever made recommendations around flexibility in school buildings? So rather than a child being in a school building because of where their parents happen to live, instead, the building that the child attends school in would be based on the needs of that particular child. Is that something that you guys have ever thought about or looked into before?
Yeah, I think there are all sorts of great models. I'm going to kick it back to Manuel because this is really his specialty, but we've looked at a host of different ways to sort of deliver spaces for education. So Manuel?
So I to make sure that I understand you correctly, part of the question is kind of a question of where the student might go in the district based on. Yeah, so worth an interesting conversation. Obviously, there's a kind of transportation impact that we would kind of want to look at as part of it. And that gets introduced as part of this process anyway. But certainly a lot of communities regionally and across the United States are looking at a lot of different models that include kind of thematic groupings or different types of groupings so that the school becomes a kind of, the way that the district is organized is based around the set of interests that the community has and wants to kind of center in their work. And that's certainly something that, as it bubbles up through these conversations, we can think about it as a kind of prioritization category in our planning.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting. I can imagine it would be logistically puzzling, but I think a logistical puzzle is easier to get around, and that shouldn't be the priority if it would mean a better serving the needs of all of our kids. I hadn't thought of it. I don't know if it would be possible, but I was interested if you had done any work around that before. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Carl.
One more quick question. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the collaborative kind of nature of this project and having experts in the community weigh in. Thank you. This is exciting. I had a question that's similar to Mrs. Piper's. I know it's tricky with safety issues, but I'm wondering about looking at the intersection between school buildings and community space, making facilities kind of multi-purpose, like high school, for example, that also doubles as a senior center when they're not closed, or having that sort of interplay between different parts of the community in a school building. Is that something that is up for discussion or that you've done in the past?
Yeah, and I'll address both questions hopefully at the same time. So yes, and certainly I heard it loud and clear in going through the walkthroughs that the schools across the regional school district are hubs in your community, and in many places, the fields are in use, the auditorium is in use, so we can be purposeful in the planning around that. And as we think about facilities, there's ways of thinking about the kind of compartmentalization of architecture that secures sections of the building in a way that allows controlled community access. So trying to kind of find that right balance as we do the work.
Thank you.
So we do look forward to seeing you again soon. I know it's time consuming to put all the pieces together and to get all the information from all the interested parties, but we definitely are an interested party, and I believe our communities are an interested party, and we'd like them to share in what you're doing. So
Can I
will.
make one comment, Madam Chair?
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to say, I just have a comment. I'm just excited about the idea of what you were talking about with looking at our buildings in terms of capacity and design and how we can design them to serve the education that we want to provide. I think that's just really cool and a great way to look at how we set up our spaces, because I think people learn better in those environments, and it feels like a really good direction to move in. So thanks.
So we'll see you back again soon. Thank you very, very much,
Yeah,
John.
we're very excited. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, folks, that's your introduction to what we're going to be looking at for the next 5 years, our buildings here in Bristol-Warren. It's an active group, and we will have a lot of community input in this. The next thing on the agenda is the approval of policy JIC, Code of Conduct, for first reading as recommended by the Policy and Curriculum Subcommittee. I need a motion.
So moved?
Second.
Discussion.
I just wanted to take a brief moment to update the public. As you may know, we've taken another look at our code of conduct a handful of years ago on the heels of some disciplinary issues at the middle school and high school and teacher and community kind of discussion. We had a more, I don't want to say punitive, but I'm going to say punitive, or more, it's a more, hold on, let me find the right word. It was a more sort of specific code of conduct where you had something that a student did and then a consequence. It was in a matrix form. So I wanted to compliment district leadership and teachers and administrators and the community for being able to pivot once we realized that code of conduct didn't work for us anymore. So we've taken another look, another go. We've had community input, lots of great discussion at our subcommittee level, and we have a more appropriate code of conduct for our community now. It is more, I am just stumbling all over myself tonight. Please pardon me. It's more, gosh, should have written something down. It's kinder, gentler. We'll get backstory from students potentially if they have a behavior issue. It's more inclusive, I think.
May I highlight a few
Please help
things?
me.
Okay. So when Superintendent Riley came on board, this is one of the first things that she looked at, our code of conduct policy. And just to highlight a couple of changes from our existing policy that is on our website, is that there's more of an increase focus on partnerships with families, number one. So working together with families and making sure that families know that they can reach out to certain individuals within the school for support, such as the school guidance counselor, the social worker, etc. So that's detailed in the policy. And in addition, there's a focus on district-wide positive and preventative behavior and social emotional interventions and supports. So earlier we talked about MTSS, the multi-tiered systems of support. So that goes along with this policy in making sure that at tier 1, we have clearly defined expectations for behaviors within schools. Students know what they are. We're providing instruction and modeling related to those expectations, and that we're monitoring their progress and supporting them along the way. Also, instead of more of a punitive measure, as Mrs. Reach was describing, we're focused more on relationship building and problem-solving practices. So you might have heard of the term conflict resolution, helping students to be able to talk through issues and developing the skills so that they can solve problems in a positive way independently, and training our staff to be able to talk through those situations with students. So a discipline issue might become a learning experience for the student. And lastly, making sure that we are focused on social emotional screenings and supports, and really taking a close look at the data that informs us how well we're doing in supporting students and responding to their needs. So the policy outlines all of that, and the work to follow is at the school level. And the superintendent and I will be working with schools to really outline how they will implement the policy and how it will look different from elementary to middle school to high school. And just one last piece that I forgot, it's more of a progressive approach to discipline. So really looking at where the student is, looking at their developmental level, the nature of the offense, and you did this, now you have this. It's really looking at all of the factors involved and doing a better job to support students.
Thank you, Dr. Santa. More of a holistic approach. I appreciate. Sometimes I should just be quiet and let the experts give us details. Thank you.
Aaron, yeah.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. One is this a policy that originated here, or did we use pieces from other districts, or how did it come about?
This was kind of a combination of what we had started with before. If you remember our main policy, and then we had the matrix underneath, and then some policies that the superintendent had worked with previously.
Okay. My second question is, because it's referred to in the policy, does every one of our schools have a student support team?
Yes, as part of MTSS is making sure that there's a team within the school to support.
So it
students.
will be something every school has?
Will be. Some of them have them now, but they're using different names and different protocols, so
Okay,
we'll build
because I'm not
consistency.
familiar with that term, so I just wanted to make sure if it's in here that we have those, in place at the schools so people can contact them.
Yeah.
As it says. Okay. And then my third question is, I think this is a great policy, and I admire the holistic approach. My one concern is that, and it's very different from the other one. I guess my one concern is when I look back on experiences that schools have had in the past with certain types of issues. I guess this just makes me wonder, will there be specific policies and protocols set up at each individual school? Because while I like the philosophy behind this, I also worry that schools and administrators need a template of some kind. And I think we heard a lot about that a few years ago from teachers and administrators. So I'm just wondering how that piece of it will work, since it's not in this policy anymore.
So that will be the next part, is working with each school level. So having the elementary principals come together and talk through the behaviors, the supports, the consequences, and have it all spelled out. You're absolutely right. Staff need to have that. Students need to understand that, and families as well. So that's the next part will come, and that will be an exhibit to the policy.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to reiterate something that Dr. Santa said about the district being more supportive of families, and how we have a list of expectations for parents and caregivers, and things that they need to provide for their children in order to allow them to be successful at school, as a basis for preventative discipline or behavioral management, or but I think that we need to be more intentional about communicating to parents who may not be able to offer the things that are needed at home for children to be successful at school. And I think that's part of the philosophy of this new policy. And I also think, Erin, that you're right about sort of advisory. So when you were talking about what you were saying, I was thinking that instead of a matrix, an if-then matrix, it's more of a take a look at what's happening and then go from, and there's a little more flexibility rather than a flat out if-then, which just doesn't fit every child in every situation. So I just wanted to say that.
Anybody else? Okay, then I'm just going to say I'm going to vote no on this policy, and not because I don't like it. I like it, but it's not finished. And until we have the other parts that people are talking about, I'm not prepared to vote for it.
Well,
So that's my opinion. It's as simple as that.
Can we ask more about that? Well, Sheila, go ahead.
It's just the first reading, right?
Yes.
Okay, first reading.
So in the second reading, that's what I was sort of thinking along those terms as well. Because I understand that there'll be an exhibit coming, but generally I feel like it comes to us at once. So I'm wondering, when this comes back for a second reading, is that included in that second reading?
I would have to check with the superintendent to see if it will be done.
Because there is a problem with it just being, it's obviously so well done, and thank you so much for your work on this. I mean, but at the same time, it just doesn't, it's not a complete piece without the whole picture. So it's difficult to know what to do tonight for me. I don't know.
Okay, so we'll see what additional detail we can provide for the second reading.
Well, I also think that Sarah brought up a good point about looking and watching and monitoring and seeing what's going on. And I would like to see that, for me, until that happens over the summer, then I'm not comfortable making this policy a hard and fast policy. The other one is very punitive. You're absolutely correct. This one is much different. I like this one, but Erin is also correct about there are some things that are not gray. Some things are black and white. And I want to see the completed policy. And it also troubles me that it would be an exhibit, because an exhibit is something that you can remove from the policy book without telling anybody. And I don't like the idea of a matrix or any other such thing being something that you can arbitrarily remove from the policy book because it's titled an exhibit. So I'd like to see a little more work on this first before I can vote on it.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Would it make sense to like not vote on this tonight and bring it back? Because that's the other thing is in addition to an exhibit being not as solidified, It's also, there's just no reference in here to like the protocols, policies, expectations, consequences at the different schools and the different levels. And I think at the very least, I personally would like to see that at least acknowledged in the policy. Does that make sense? Yeah.
No, I think what you're asking is completely appropriate. I think because it is kind of a little more vague, it feels incomplete. And in order for us to feel comfortable about it, I agree. I think we should have something a little bit more fenced in, maybe is the right kind of idea, or something, as Aaron said, parameters. That
Would
seems
you
appropriate to me.
mind if we tabled it?
No, I think the only reason why we were trying to have this happen this month is because we're not meeting next month and wanted to make sure that we had time to put it in handbooks. But this is important enough that I think it should be tabled and discussed further.
All right, then I need a motion to table.
Make a motion to table the
Discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. We may still end up having a meeting. Is the lawn care contract. This has been reviewed by the Budget Facilities Subcommittee, and there's been a recommendation from Grounds and Maintenance, and I need a motion.
Second.
Discussion, before we get to discussion, the grounds maintenance contract is for DuPont Landscaping. Yes.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to inject this evening that I had spoken with the Director of Facilities over the weekend, because the bid did not come in until Thursday, so we didn't have it for the Finance and Budget Committee.
Oh, that's right. All right, I'm
So I
sorry.
just wanted to clarify that first. But after reviewing the value of the contract that's on the table, I have asked the Facilities Director to give me an assessment of man hours applicable to the district-wide, and if there's other options. Is considerably higher than what we had planned on.
Yeah.
And so we would like you to give us time. We've already reached out to DuPont to let them know we would be looking at in-depth. They're going to provide us with their cost estimates for fertilizers and the things of that nature. So we'd like to return.
So would you
next
like to
week.
table this as
Please.
well?
Yes.
All right, I need a motion to table.
Just ask one question
Yeah.
before you do it. Tony, is this just Bristol? This doesn't include Warren, or is it both Bristol and Warren?
No, it was for Bristol and Warren.
Both of them? And is
Yeah.
it just grounds? And
This
is
is
it
just-
athletic fields too?
And at Mount Hope, yes,
Just at Mount Hope, not at, because KMS is.
correct.
All right.
The rec
So-
department
Yes,
of
it
Warren.
Is it snow removal or no?
This is not snow removal.
okay.
We were looking for just the lawn care, grounds maintenance for all 6 buildings,
Both towns?
Warren and Bristol, yeah.
Okay.
And just for context, I mean, DuPont's has been under contract for more than 5 years. It has not gone out for bid in a while.
Yeah.
And it's just a combination of, it's been a long time since we've gotten a number on it. Cost of fertilizer,
Right,
fuel, labor, everything is just,
Does it also include the Gutierrez baseball field?
yes.
Okay.
Tom, we do nothing with the Warren facility behind Kikamio, is that correct?
We do the grounds that are immediately adjacent to the building, but the large parcel of land across the parking lot with the old track and the football fields.
The whole field and all
The whole
those?
the whole athletic.
That's
part
not a
is-
responsibility, is that correct?
That's correct. The town of Warren maintains that under the
Right,
rec
thank you.
department.
All right, so I need a motion on the table to table this.
So moved.
And Ms. Frucci, you'll get back to us after you and DuPont have had your discussions?
We will. Thank you,
All
Madam
right,
Chair.
thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. E, school lunch contract renewal. I need a motion.
Motion.
And a
Second.
second. Discussion. You want to tell us about this one?
I'm happy to do that. Under Rhode Island law, school districts are okay to offer up to a 5-year contract to a school lunch vendor. However, there is a standing contract, and embedded in that is a requirement of an annual renewal each year during the 5-year course. We just don't have to go out to bid. So I provide in your packet a copy of the template document. It's a typical contract. Nothing's changed from last year to this year, as well as a budget. We do have an existing contract with Chartwells. I'm here to recommend that we award the contract for next school year. I do have a representative from Chartwell's. If there are any questions, Mr. Mark Roy is here. He's the regional director for Chartwell's. And he is projecting budgetarily a small surplus of about $35,000 with no price hikes to the students. The only thing I do want to pitch while I have the microphone is that on June 30th, the free lunch for everybody at this point sunsets. And we are ramping up to get folks to get their free and reduced lunch applications in over the summer. If they haven't done it since March 2020, put in an application, they won't qualify for free lunch the first day of school unless they've got the application in. So we're going to be promoting that over the next month or so to get folks to engage. Again, Mr. Roy's here if you've got any questions, and if not, we seek your approval.
No, I think it's really important that you brought that up at this time, because free and reduced lunches and the children who need them also bring other things into the district. So it's very, very important to fill out that form. It's private. Nobody gets to know what it is, but we will be asking you to do that over the summer and at the beginning of the school year. So please look for that and see if you qualify. And if you don't, well, thank you very much. Yes, Erin.
Thank you. At what point are we at in this contract?
I believe this is the second or third year of the
Okay.
5-year.
So I just have a general question. Is this just an update for the school committee and public?
Yes,
Because
for the
since we're
most
in the
part,
middle of
yes.
a contract, are we voting? What is the,
Yes, it does require a school committee vote to.
but why
renew-
is that if we're in the middle of a contract?
The state.
Whether it's the validation, I would assume, I don't understand the full historics, but I would assume it allows each school committee to hear their school lunch budget to make sure that it's running in surplus and not deficits. And also the setting of prices that affect the communities. That's probably the primary reason why it would come to you annually.
Maybe 5, maybe 10 years ago, we had to up the price of lunch. And that's what you're talking about, is that we have to take a look at where we are. And the federal government only ups the price of lunch in nickels or dimes?
Nickels.
Nickels. So I think we took a dime so that it could carry us a little bit farther before we had to change the cost of lunch. And in case anybody didn't know, that's how the federal government charges us. So thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And the last thing on the agenda is the resolution 16-7-40. I sent this to you. We've also heard from I can't speak to the town of Warren because I haven't spoken to Superintendent Riley, but I do know that the town of Bristol. And we're looking to extend the length of this until the end of December, correct?
I believe that to be true. Well, this one is the extension of the credits of the 5%.
Correct.
Through December, construction through December 30th, 2023.
Correct.
That's adding the extra year of construction because of the delays we've experienced with COVID. If not, they would expire this December 2022. Excuse me. And basically that becomes really important for us based on a conversation we had earlier. The application process of stage 1, stage 2 going through RIDE is getting these 5% credits added to the approval process. So us preparing our application and having RIDE consider it, will need to have these on record that they're available when they make the award, saying, yes, we support your $100 million capital program and we're willing to give you your 63% plus 5% for this, 5% for that, 5% for this. If not, we're down to 63. So this is critically important that they extend those 5% incentives.
So I need a motion,
Motion.
and I need a second. Yeah, it could get us to 85% reimbursement, which means if you build something for 100 million, you only spend 15 million. And so I think that the longer time slot is important. Nikki?
Yeah, I don't understand why, because you mentioned you spoke to Bristol, but you haven't spoken to the.
No, I did not speak to Bristol. The last time I spoke to Superintendent Riley, she indicated to me that she had spoken to Bristol. She did not indicate to me that she had spoken to Warren yet. So I cannot speak
I
to
just
what-
don't understand what that has to do with this. I'm missing something.
Well, the town is encouraged, the towns are encouraging the state reps and legislators to buy onto this extended length.
Got
And
it.
I just can't, it has nothing to do with anything other than my last communication with her only included what I just said and not anything else. And so I cannot speak to whether or not she did or she didn't, and I wouldn't want to do that at this point in time.
I understand. So this resolution is that we're asking for the extension. But
Correct.
you're saying separately, the towns.
Well, the
will
towns and the
potentially
people in
be
the
asking.
town certainly benefit from our ability to get 85% reimbursement.
Got it.
So we need to be proactive. Well, I think that we need to be proactive in this area, and I think Mr. Ferrucci agrees with me, and I think it will benefit all of us. And you're seeing across the state, you're seeing what Newport and Middletown are trying to do to get to that 85%.
Yep.
So
thank
that's
you.
what this is about. So all in
I have
favor?
a question.
Yeah.
Where did this come from?
Well, originally it came from Burrowville?
Came from another district.
It came from another district, yes.
And then the town councils are
No,
also
town councils,
signing
no,
this?
no, I shouldn't have brought that up because town councils didn't have anything to do with it. Anna looked at it and said, yes, we need to do this. Talked with Tony about it.
So
I
it's
had a
something
meeting with her and
circulating
she
to
said,
different school committees.
yes.
Okay.
Something circulating to all the school committees in the state. Yes.
And
Thanks.
it, forget I ever. Any of that? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and I will sign it. And with that, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.